Picture this. It's 682 BCE. Duke Zhuang of Zhang is perfectly performing a sacred spring sacrifice inside his ancestral temple. He's pouring wine at the exact right angle, presenting offerings, and reciting his lineage flawlessly. But outside, his ministers are literally having a sword fight in the courtyard over a border dispute, and the historical record tells us the Duke couldn't even intervene.
The historical text, the Zhujuan, records this exact clash of bronze bells and weapons. And what's absolutely wild here is that the ceremonial rules were being followed to the letter, but the actual coordinative magic of society had just stopped working. The Duke had formal authority, sure, but zero practical power. The ritual was flawless, but the effect was completely gone.
So, this brings up the central mystery of our explainer today. If the rules were flawless and the Duke did everything exactly right, why in the world was society completely falling apart? Why did classical Chinese society suffer a total system crash? To understand this 200-year quest to fix a massive bug in the system, we're going to cover the perfect broken ritual, rules that create reality when the system crashes, 4 incompatible fixes, and finally, the harmony test.
Starting with Section 1, the perfect broken ritual. Let's look at how the original Zhou dynasty system was actually supposed to function before everything went completely off the rails.
To understand ancient China, we really have to look through the lens of what philosopher John Rawls calls a constitutive practice. Now, these aren't just laws that tell you what not to do. They are the invisible rules that literally define what reality is for the people living inside them. They invent the game.
Think of it like this. A speed limit is a regulative rule. People are already driving, and the rule just slows them down. But the rules of chess? Those are constitutive rules. Without them, moving a little wooden horse across a checkered board means absolutely nothing. The rules invent the reality of the game itself. An ancient Zhou society was built entirely on constitutive rules.
The Zhou's game had 3 main constitutive pillars. First up, ritual performance, which didn't just symbolize authority, it literally was authority. If you performed the ceremony, you held the power. Second, kinship infrastructure, which defines societal and military obligations inherently. A son owed support just by the very definition of the word son. And third, the mandate of heaven, which was the ultimate proof that the whole thing worked, demonstrated through good harvests and military victories. And you know, no one questioned this, because it worked seamlessly for 4 centuries.
But what happens when that system stops computing? That brings us to Section 2, when the system crashes.
Enter the state of Chu. By the 7th century BCE, Chu started breaking basically every single constitutive rule on the books. They ignored Zhao protocols, they illegally adopted royal titles, and they even bypassed the king to sacrifice directly to heaven. Now, by the logic of the Zhao operating system, Chu should have been destroyed by some massive cosmic disaster. Yet, instead of being punished, their population exploded and their armies conquered everything in their path.
So here is the massive logical glitch. If following the rules is what brings prosperity, which, remember, was the entire point of the mandate of heaven, why is the ultimate rule breaker thriving? The internal logic of the system simply couldn't explain how a rogue state was doing so well. The framework's logic was intact on paper, but its application to reality had completely broken down. The practice had officially failed.
And with society unraveling, we hit Section 3, 4 incompatible fixes. This is where 4 brilliant philosophical schools step up to try and patch the code.
So we have these 4 competing fixes from Confucianism, Moism, Taoism, and legalism. And here's the thing you have to understand. They weren't just arguing about morality. They were proposing completely incompatible operating systems for society. You couldn't just mix and match these. It was literally like trying to run totally different software on the exact same machine.
Let's look at Confucianism first. Confucianists diagnosed the crash not as a bad system, but as bad users. They said, look, the inherited rules of the Zhao dynasty are totally sound, but they require internal moral substance to actually work. It's kind of like having a perfectly coded app, but the servers are down. They argued that society just needed to deeply cultivate inner virtue, things like filial piety and benevolence, to restore those old constitutive rules and make the rituals actually mean something again.
Then you have Moism. Mozi saw a structural architectural flaw. He thought the Zhou system had embedded partiality, like intense family bias, way too deep in the code. So his fix was a 2-tier architecture. He put universal, impartial love at the top system level,
meaning all governance must benefit everyone equally. But he kept particular interests, like caring for your own parents, safely contained at the local action level. It was a massive structural rewrite of the whole system.
Now, Taoists came in with a totally different read on the situation. They warned that strictly defining positive rules just teaches people how to fake it strategically. I mean, think about it. If you tell someone exactly how to act virtuous, they'll just put on a theatrical performance to get the reward. So they proposed negative enabling rules, or Wu Wei. The idea was to step back, stop over-specifying everything, and just let spontaneous, natural order emerge on its own.
And finally, legalism just threw out the old constitutive playbook entirely. They decided that you absolutely cannot rely on rare moral virtue. Instead, they built a purely regulative system. They brought in explicit laws, strict administrative techniques, and harsh punishments and rewards. They relied entirely on basic human self-interest. To them, you don't need a good person, you just need a person who wants to avoid pain and gain profit, and boom, the system regulates itself.
So we have 4 wildly different fixes. That brings us to Section 4, the harmony test. Let's see how all of this builds into an impossible philosophical gridlock.
This part is fascinating because every single one of these schools claimed their ultimate goal was exactly the same thing, harmony, or he in Chinese. So if they all wanted harmony, why on earth did they argue so bitterly for over 2 centuries?
Well, because they meant completely different things when they said the word harmony. For a Confucian, harmony was restored moral substance and voluntary coordination. For a Moist, it was structural impartial alignment. For a Taoist, spontaneous equilibrium. And for a legalist, functionally enforced compliance. This proves they weren't just disagreeing on how to win the game, they were playing entirely different games from the start.
Even their shared vocabulary completely failed them. Take the concept of heaven. To a Confucian, heaven was the ultimate cosmic validation of moral order. But legalists, they completely excluded heaven from their system because appealing to some higher cosmic power disrupted their strict earthly chain of command. They were literally talking past each other using the exact same dictionary.
Which brings us to our final section. Section 5, Why We Still Argue. Let's connect this ancient system crash directly to our world today.
What you really should take away from all this is exactly why certain systemic arguments today feel utterly impossible to resolve. When fundamental frameworks clash, we don't just disagree on the facts, we talk past each other. Just like in ancient China, we are so often arguing from fundamentally incompatible frameworks about what creates reality and what a good society even looks like. Ultimately, the Warring States philosophers could not resolve the question of which operating system is truly best, and honestly, neither can we. But understanding the deep structure of our disagreements, recognizing when we're playing different games with different rules, is the very first step toward actual wisdom. So, are you trying to fix the people, or are you trying to fix the code? Think about that the next time you find yourself stuck in an unresolvable debate.